Hey, I'm Vicki Gatz, Director of Education with AGC of Michigan. AGC of Michigan serves construction professionals of Michigan by fostering and strengthening the key values of skill, integrity, and responsibility of those who build Michigan. All participants will be muted for the duration of the presentation, except for the designated Q&A session at the end. Please enter your questions in the chat box or raise your hand to be unmuted, and we'll ask you that you wait until you be identified before unmuting to reduce the risk of feedback. So since we're recording today's presentation, I will distribute those with the slide deck tomorrow to everybody who registered for the webinar. And with the housekeeping issues out of the way, I'll turn the session over to Matt, Sales and Marketing Direct Manager with Grit Technology, and he can introduce our panelists and guide the conversation. So let's get started, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for coming out here today. We really appreciate the opportunity from the AGC of Michigan to come forward with very much a top-of-mind topic for a lot of construction firms. It seems, especially in the last 3 years, I've been actually speaking at a couple different associations as well as a couple different firms specifically on this topic, as it is it's a growing issue. And today our goal is not to give you guys a death by PowerPoint by any means, but we are really going to give you guys really what is happening as of today, and really specifically talking about what's happening just in our backyard here in Michigan. So I'll start off, just go ahead and introduce just our panelists today real quick. So first off, my name is Matt Moline. I'm the head of sales and marketing over at Grit Technologies. We are a managed service provider servicing small to mid-sized clients for IT services across the state of Michigan. Also with me today is one of my counterparts and good friend and partner, Jim Hoffman. He's one of our alignment engineers. I know enough to be dangerous, but Jim is definitely the one with the more technical expertise. So he's really going to give us a good insight into just what we recommend as far as what IT firms, internal IT, or if you're working with an MSP, really what areas we should be focusing on as we move into the end of this year and really into 2025. I also got Saroj from Arctic Wolf. Arctic Wolf is one of our cybersecurity partners. They provide a couple solutions for us in really to keep our clients safe. And it's the stuff that he's talking about is really the next generation of what I would call security and just protection for small to mid-size and also enterprise type of businesses. So thank you so much for being here. He's going to talk about some really key areas into some gaps that are, I'd say, have been emerging for the last 5 years, but really specifically in the last couple of years. So thank you so much for being here. And then last but not least, partner, friend, also client, Brian from BTC Insurance. Brian's the Senior Vice President of Group Operations over there. We've been working with BTC, I think, for, over, 20 years or so now, Brian. So long time. So long-standing partners. And just our group here today, we actually did an event like this, actually just this last month as well. It was in person. And it was a great time and just a lot of great information. And we want to share that with you guys here today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kind of get into it. I'm going to start off today just kind of giving a general just overview as far as the landscape, as far as some of the data that we've come in contact with and what we've personally seen here at Grit Technologies. And then as far as the format of this event, after I'm done, I'm going to hand it over to Jim. And then I'm going to hand it over to Saroj, and then we're going to end with Brian. We do have some pre-made questions that we typically get that we're going to cover, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. We want this to be, an open forum to ask those questions. You've got basically 3 experts here available for you. So if you got any questions, now would be the time to get that in. So definitely at any point, enter that stuff into the chat and ask a question away, and we will go ahead and get started here. So thank you again. So just kind of starting off, one person we did want as a part of this a part of this panel that was not able to be here today was actually a representative, a detective within the cybersecurity division of the Michigan State Police. I did want to highlight just some key things that he pointed out. We were over at Awe Construction last month where we did a live in-person panel presentation like what we're doing today. Some key things that I thought were just really interesting. Just within Michigan, and we're talking about our own backyard here, really the top five, most targeted industries that they've seen based on their data. And this is in no particular order. It's just that these are the top five. And of course, construction does fall into these top five. So real estate, construction, government, insurance, and finance. It's just where all the money is, and where just the majority of tax and those types of issues are happening, which is pretty interesting. So kind of what's leading to these things, what I would consider main contributors. Within construction, what we've seen is just an increase in digital, just increase in tech, increase in digital. And it always wasn't that case. Data has been very important, analyzing data for, construction data, obviously for, to be able to save money, to be more productive, cut cost, just being able to review that type of data internally. We're seeing all sorts of amazing things happen within the construction industry as far as just technology and increase in digitalization. And we've exploded into all different types of cloud tools. There's been all different types of vendors when it comes to construction, which really just making things more fast, more efficient, safer for people, but also more susceptible to hackers with these increasing the attack surfaces, as we would say. Along with this, just fast movement, especially within the last 5 years. Not that this was intentional by any means, but we've just seen a weak presence in just cybersecurity. Now, this is really becoming more front of mind. We're hearing more and more things, in the news. I think everybody today knows of a company or at least individuals that had some sort of cybersecurity attack or had some sort of incident of some type these days. But really, we've seen a lot of firms historically have just a lack of just protection, things like firewalls, things like multi-factor authentication. Well, you'll hear more about that as we continue with our presentation today. But we've just seen attacks happening, and still the main method is through phishing and social engineering. Through email, targeting employees and stealing those credentials is really still the preferred method. Historically, this has also been the case. We're going to provide some more details on that as we move forward here today as well, just talking more in depth about that and why that's still the preferred method, and how they're kind of getting around that stuff. Of course, just supply chain vulnerabilities. They're completely bypassing a lot of a lot of things are going directly for those web applications, going to those known breaches for the different types of software and stuff that we use on a daily basis. And ultimately, the last point is just getting into those ransomware threats. Small to mid-sized businesses are big targets. They lack historically a lot of the protection that an enterprise type of business would have. Attackers know this, and they're here to exploit it. So just because the idea is back in the day was, I'm a small company, this isn't going to happen, there's nothing's going to happen to me. That's not true today. It doesn't matter the size of the company. It doesn't matter if you're a 5-person firm or if you're 5,000. It doesn't matter anymore. They're really looking more for the vulnerability, and ultimately the end game is locking a company's data up with ransomware, and then obviously trying to get some sort of money or their type of extortion attack out of you guys. So just kind of going back to within just phishing being one of the prevalent methods. Again, data from the Michigan State Police. What was really interesting is just what they've seen is that it still works, and we're going to talk about why it's still working. Overall, users click on 1 to 20 phishing emails. Some of the data that we saw, 25% of those links clicked happened within the first 10 minutes, 50% within the first hour, and 90% within the first 24 hours. So the main goal is really getting your guys' credentials. That's a big, big piece to this, because basically with credentials, you guys can pretty much access anything. We already talked about, phishing a little bit, but basically that social engineering, them using, fake emails and websites to really trick people in order to get those credentials. And phishing is still one of the big things behind that. Along with those credentials, many people still use the same username and password for a lot of different logins out there, even though we as IT folks continually talk about, best practices and creating unique, strong passwords for, all the different accounts that we have. But they are really exploiting in the people reusing those passwords. And that's leading to a lot of breaches as well, because, if they use the same username and password in one place, they're going to use it in, the other place as well. And ultimately, what they're looking at and doing what we're seeing a lot of too is them really kind of being that man in the middle where they're able to gain access into an organization, through those credentials, basically sit on somebody's email and really either pretend or set up forwarding rules, for that particular email account, and basically work to try to get like a wire transfer going, or have somebody, put in, specific bank information, all that type of stuff. And that's, again, some of the main things, the reason why they want those credentials, because they are so valuable. Just a couple more things, and then I'll start handing things over to Jim on my side. Kind of the big thing that everybody's talking about and kind of wondering is just really, where does artificial intelligence play into this? One of the big things that we've been seeing, and also just what, not just construction, but just through small to mid-sized businesses across the state, is really that artificial intelligence is really becoming a new weapon. Now, you guys have probably heard of ChatGPT. You guys have, probably used it. You probably use it in your business today. A lot of people are using this type of, type of program. The thing about it, which is interesting, is that even though ChatGPT's put a lot of safeguards in place and not allowing people to write, up like malicious code for malware, or, put things in place for, people trying to do like, sophisticated phishing emails and things like that, they're still finding ways around it. And even coming out with different variants within the dark web that are Chat GPT like, and it's causing a lot of disruption. But since Chat GPT came out, which, by the way, was November 2022, so just a couple years ago, and since that time we've seen over 1,000% increase in phishing attacks because of these types of tools. The big thing here is, and this is where I want to really frame this conversation today, is that artificial intelligence, along with a lot of the other things that we've just talked about, has really lowered the barrier for cyber criminals. There was a lot of barrier before. It's enabling those with really limited skills to be able to conduct these types of malicious attacks, or phishing attempts. And since these programs are conversational, the AI is conversational, it's really bringing down the barrier, the language barrier, because a lot of these are happening overseas, to where we traditionally could detect that this seems a little strange, or even though it's in the English language, they're using some weird words in there that, or maybe using like an English variation, of those words, and it just didn't look right and look suspicious, and would give us a red flag. Today, it's bypassing all of that, and so that's some of the things we're seeing with AI. And ultimately, the big thing I want to point out is that this is here to stay. It's only going to increase in speed and sophistication, and it's already smarter than we could ever be. The big thing about it is that we are seeing that it's just really at a point where it's just going beyond human capabilities of being able to detect these things, and being able to, to really proactively come against these threats. However, that being said, we do have, things that we're going to talk about today, and best practices to basically combat a lot of this. So this is not a scare tactic by any means, guys. We're here to give you guys the resources. But one of the key things here, and this is just a graph out of the Verizon data report out of 2024, just ultimately seeing is that we are seeing, with all of these different exploits and these tools that these guys are using, we are seeing a increase in attacks across the board. Specifically, a couple things I want you guys to take note of in this graph is that the we always hear about ransomware, and ultimately the end goal was always ransomware. What we are seeing is the rise of extortion attacks, where they're using ransomware, but it's not just that's the end goal of, ransoming the data, encrypting everything, and then you got to pay a certain amount to release your data. They're really getting access into an organization, sitting there for days, if not weeks, if not months, collecting all, maybe crucial information, documentation, that type of stuff, and then basically threatening to release that stuff out into the web, while they also use ransomware to basically lock that data and cripple that business during that time. So these different tactics and what they're using, what we're seeing is that even though within the last couple of years we might have seen just a little bit of a dip within just ransomware, extortion is on the rise quite significantly, and the combination of the two are ever increasing, and it's definitely something that to take note, and ultimately we want to protect ourselves against. So with that, I want to go ahead and start the conversation with Jim from our team. So Jim Hoffman with Grid Technologies. Jim's going to go through just some of the best practices that really any IT personnel should really be looking into. So Jim, I'll go ahead and let you take it over, buddy.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everybody, to the webinar. My name is Jim. I'm with Grid. I've been here since 2018. They opened their doors in 2008. There's 43-ish employees. We're located in Township and Grand Rapids, and roughly 195 companies that we support, 96 fully managed. Currently, we have about 4,000 endpoints, maybe a little bit more than that. And we're onboarding, more and more every day, actually. We have an onboard going on right now. One of the things that from the MSP side is we try to be as proactive as we can be in the defense and compliance. Threat intelligence and security tools that we implement, we have firewalls in place. Those firewalls support IDS and IPS, endpoint detection and response, like your antivirus, next-gen antivirus, and automated threat detection, which is part of that AI thing that Matt was talking about, to secure those network and endpoints. Patch and security monitoring, another thing that we try to push and make sure that things happen in a timely manner is to make sure that you're monitoring your systems and that crucial critical security patches get applied in a timely basis, because those mitigate the vulnerabilities that are found. Regulatory compliance, we've been seeing a lot more on that as well, and Brian will be able to talk about on the insurance side, but we've got clients that are looking to implement this, that, or the other thing, and they got to go through a compliance to make sure that happens, develop their security policies, maintain their documentation. Documentation's a big one, and we assist with making sure that they get to those points. Another thing is training and awareness. You'll hear this, and the MSP was talking about this a lot. Training and awareness. Make sure that you're training your users on the cybersecurity attack threat vectors. Make sure you're making sure that they're aware. Conduct phishing simulations. Another thing, that's a big one, that's part of it. Making sure that you know who's clicking what, and put them back through training if they're continually clicking on things, and ongoing training. And educating your users in that is one of the bigger things. Incident response and recovery. We develop response plans to contain, mitigate, recover, and get things back up and running in the event of an actual disaster. Having those plans documented, again, documentation is a big thing. Making sure that all that stuff's documented, so you can get back up and running in the event of a disaster. Simulated phishing. These are actually some simulated phishing things that I've presented to Matt to put in the presentation. These are actual things that we've sent out to some of our clients that say, hey, take a look at these. We've got Salvatore Ventini here. The reply is there, data breach, complementary identity, on this one, it's saying, hey, there was a national public data experience breach August of 2024. Down here, there's probably a link that says, hey, click here to see what may have been released. But is that something that you should click on? Should you look at protect-info.com and the reply in the from email at the top? A lot of red flags in this email. Here's another one that looks like it came from the HR department here at gridtex.com. In fact, gridtex.com is our domain. So, if somebody were to get this and here's your timesheet, Hey, click here for the links. Obviously, we don't use HR auto notifications with our timesheet, so anybody here at Grit should be able to look at this and say, hey, this is something I should be wary about. Click that fish alert button and report this email. These are getting better and better as we go along. This one looks like it comes from Microsoft itself. Hey, you got a new document from whoever, scan this QR code. And obviously the QR code probably goes to a malicious site. Again, look at the from and reply tos, alerts-microsoft.com. Is that really Microsoft? Is it not Microsoft? Do they really have something like that? A lot of red flags in there. And they're even using the Microsoft logo in this email to really try and trick and spoof this email to make it look like it came from them, because they want somebody to scan that QR code. Here's another one. Looks like it came from Chase Bank. Obviously, chase-support.net. Is that the right from and reply to? They've got their logo in there. There's information here, your important updates about your account. Click here to see what those updates are. If you don't bank with Chase, would you click this update button? Would you, a lot of red flags again in this one too. Moving forward, backup and disaster recovery. We spoke a little bit about the importance of getting your stuff back to business as usual, I'll call it, but the importance of backups. Make sure you have your backups and backup your data. In the event that something happens, how fast can you get back to business as usual? Depends on what your backup strategy looks like. And a lot of the backup strategies these days do have some protection against ransomware, accidental deletion, and complete system failures. Document your disaster recovery plan. Again, documentation, that's a big thing. That way you have a plan when something does happen, and it's not, an if or anything like that. It's a when. When something does happen, how fast can you get back to business as usual? And then testing and validation. Make sure that your backups work. Test them annually. Do a test restore. Make sure you can restore the data that you're actually backing up. Because if you don't know that you can restore it, or you run into a failure at some point during that restore because it hasn't been tested, are you ever going to get back to business as usual? Cost versus security balance. This is something that we've spoken about. And again, this goes back to, cost benefits, to risk assess what you have. What's the cost going to be to get to where you want to get in your security stack as well? Identify your critical areas that you want to secure. Find out what the investment's going to cost. Is this going to be cost effective to do? And weigh the cost between not doing anything and doing all of it or part of it, depending on what type of loss or breach you're going to have. That's one of those balancing acts that, everybody's got to play in a day-to-day to see where do we want to be? What risks can we accept as a risk, or do we need to do something about that? Starting the cybersecurity journey, to do an initial assessment, identify your vulnerabilities, assess your current security posture if there is one, and build that out. Document that out and build it out. Build the strategy on how you're going to get to where you need to get to, or what actionable cybersecurity plans that can be tailored to your needs, something that Grit can definitely help you with. And again, ongoing education, cybersecurity education, keep up with the evolving threats, continuously adapt your strategies, take a look at them annually, review those things annually with your MSP or your IT department, and continue to move forward.
Awesome. Thank you much, Jim, for that. At this time, I'm going to go ahead over to Saroj with Art of Wolf.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Matt. Hello, Michigan. This is Saroj from Minneapolis. I'm with Art of Wolf, and I'm a sales engineer at Art of Wolf. So about the company itself, we've been around since 2012 and growing. We're a startup, but we haven't gone IPO yet, but we are growing our business, right? Growing our partners, all that. So what we do is we provide a solution, we have a tools, right? But then we provide a solution as well. And along with the industry, we have evolved over the years. So if you look at it, right, back in 90s, the people focus on, basic things such as patching, backups, AD, right? So bad guys were not sophisticated back then, right? And then hackers came into the picture. Now then industry developed to with solutions such as firewalls, right? Intrusion detection system, protection system, DNS, all that, right? And as the industry evolved, right, then we had uh, antivirus came into the picture, data loss protection, right? DDoS attack and all that, right? But as we move forward with this in this journey, right? Where do you want to go? Where do we want to go, right? Business want to be proactive, right? They want to be confident that their asset is protected, right? The data is protected, and they're compliant, right? If they are in the different industries, such as, let's say, banking or in health insurance and all that, they need to follow the compliance standard, right? And most importantly, the business remain to, they want to be profitable, right? And then insurable, right? So this is where they want to go. But if you look at right now, they have things such as EDR tools, antivirus tool, DDoS attack, and there is a gap, right? That's where the article comes into play. We provide broad visibility. We see a lot of things, right? Not only endpoint, not only firewall, not only cloud. We see a lot of stuff, and we provide 24/7, 365 coverage by working with partners such as Grid. Grid delivers our solution. We work hand in hand with Grid. And we have the expert. We have more than 700 engineers dedicated to our customers. And then we also provide guidance. We are not only getting alerts from us, right? We'll tell you what happened and what you can do to recover from it. And this is where the Grid will help the end customer to deliver our solution. And then we also work with Grid to do continuous improvement, right? Things are always evolving. There are gaps. There are vulnerabilities being discovered every single day, right? This is where we partner with MSP partner like Grid to deliver our solution and improve the posture for our customers. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the problem we solve, right? The first thing is, protecting and defending against all sort of threats. Could be phishing simulation, could be DDoS attack, right? The other thing is, as you know, things are evolving, computer things are always changing. So there is a shortage of talent, right? Folks that are expert in cybersecurity, right? And that's what we do at Article Fees. We hire based off the best, and then we continue to train them to be better. And then also the other thing is, if you buy one tool, right, that doesn't solve all the needs, right? That's why you have firewall to block the traffic. You have antivirus software to block, to mitigate virus thing on endpoints, right? And we are doing all these things because one tool doesn't solve everything, And then also the challenge is, companies are spending all this money, but still there's not efficiency, right? And other thing is, you're handling all this thing, right? Managing a business, satisfying your customer needs, and then you need to make sure that you're compliant as well. So that's so many challenges the customers are dealing with, right? This is where we come in and help solve many of these needs. Next slide, please. So at the high level, right, what do we do? What Article does, right? We have 4 main solutions. Keep going, Matt. One is called MDR, Managed Detection and Response. What this means is that, we are getting logs from, let's say, laptop, desktop, right? That's one piece. We are also monitoring your network traffic, right? Where those devices are communicating. your iPads, for example. Maybe the traffic is going to China, Russia, right? Nowadays, people use cloud, such as Office 365, for emails, for collaboration and all that. Identity, right? Maybe you're logging with Microsoft Entra ID, right? Duo, multi-factor authentication, things as such, and human layers. People are doing activities, right? So what we do is we feed every single data points, right? Logs into your system. And then if we see some suspicious behavior, right? Traffic going to China or user downloading something, right? A device communicating with, domain that is known to host malware, we work with MSP partner like Grid to, address those security risks. That's what the MDR solution does. Monitoring, detecting almost real time, and taking actions. So that's our MDR solution. More of a reactive, right? If you see something, we can do about it. We can do something about it. Then we have managed risk solution. This is more of a proactive solution where we scan your endpoints, servers, network connected device for vulnerabilities, right? If you find some breaks, we will tell that to Grid, and Grid can help you patch those system, upgrade software applications, and all that. The third solution we have is managed security awareness. If you look at all the breaches happen over the years, right? Many things happen. Bad guy got into the system, they stole data because of human errors, right? Human mistakes. 80% of the data breaches happens because of things such as phishing attack, social engineering attacks, right? This is where our managed security awareness solutions come to play, where we're doing things such as training folks about phishing attacks, right? Social engineering attacks. We do quizzes, we do videos, and we do phishing simulation as well to train the end users to be, in the lookout for things such as, ransomware attack, right? Or going to some random website and downloading content. That's a big no-no, right? We train, teach users about those threats using our managed security awareness training. The fourth solution we have is incident response. This is like a really bad stuff happened in your environment, right? You got 20 servers, they got encrypted, now they're asking for ransomware, right? Or maybe data got compromised, data got breached, now there's a lawsuit, and you need to discover what happened, right? That's a digital forensics, right? This is where we can jump in, hands on keyboard from our side, and help you recover from events such as that. So that's the four main solution Articles provides by working with partners such as Grid. Next slide, please. So this tells a picture of why just having one solution, one tool doesn't fix the problem. If you look at it, the things that led to investigation on our platform, right? 30% of those events incident came from network actually, meaning we saw things flowing in your network. Maybe it's a laptop communicating to some bad site in Russia, right? We detected that, 30%, That's why you need to monitor your network regularly, like continuous basis. 20% of the ticket came from identity, meaning that we detected something with maybe multi-factor authentication or user accounts in Microsoft Office 365. Somebody hacked into your email address, right? Or your customer email address, username, they got the username, password, credentials, and all that, And if you look at all the things, right? Firewall, like we're detecting traffic coming from bad sites, right? SaaS applications such as, Salesforce, Box, right? If you're using those solutions, bad guys can get into those sites as well, right? This is why you need to look at everything, not just looking at the endpoint like laptop, desktop, fixes all the problem, right? You need to look at the endpoint. You need to look at the firewall, SaaS providers, and also you need to scan your public facing applications, such as, let's say you're hosting a website, WordPress website that is exposed to the internet. Do you know if those sites are vulnerabilities or not, right? Maybe not, right? This is where we provide the continuous scanning solution as well. Your network scan internally, or scan your applications for vulnerability that are exposed to the internet. And also we do host-based scanning as well. Next slide, please. With Arctic Wolf, we provide the solution, right? We have the tool, but we have the solution, So we have more than 6,000 customers now. We are 24/7, 365. So we do the work for, partner like Grid and end customers. We are monitoring 24/7. If we see something, we always make sure it is true positive, right? When we send the ticket to Grid or customers, that usually is a true positive, right? We do all the investigation, we know what happened, and we work with Grid resolve issues like that, And to put the number, right now we're ingesting 5 trillion of events a week. That's a big number, right? I mean, what is events, right? If you think about it, it's like, somebody tries to log in, that's an event. Somebody downloads the file, that's an event. Somebody enters, google.com on a browser, right? That's an event, right? So we correlate all those things to put the picture on what's happening in a customer environment. Next slide, please. So this is a high-level architecture of our MDR solution. So what are we doing, right? If you look at it, we are getting logs from Box, Google Workspace, Microsoft Office 365, right? If you're using, let's say, AWS, right, Azure, we get the data too, We get the data from firewall, right, wireless access points, gateways, We have agent running on folks' laptop and desktop, so we know what's happening on those endpoints, We have a network sensor that captures the traffic flow to see where the traffic is flowing, coming in and out, right? So we feed all that data into our platform and analyze the data and then deliver our solution using a concierge team, meaning that we have humans involved delivering a solution. It's not like you're getting some random alerts at midnight and you're on own to figure it out, right? That's not the case. We always have engineers working with partners such as Grid to deliver a solution. Next slide, please. And this is our managed risk architecture. What are we scanning, right? What are we doing? We can scan your cloud environment. We can scan the host, right? Windows, Mac, Linux systems, and also do scanning of your external facing application. We can do Nmap, right? We can do OAP's top 10 vulnerability scanning, And again, and also actually we can scan the dark web to see if they contain information of employees, right? Username, password, and all that. If you find those information on dark web, we will notify you as well. And again, this is all delivered using our concierge model, meaning we have engineers dedicated to our customer and partners, and you'll be working with the dedicated engineers to deliver a solution. Next slide, please.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you very much. Cool. I'll hand this over now to Brian over at BTC. Give us the latest. What's going on in cyber and insurance? Go ahead, Brian.
No, thank you, Matt. Yeah, I guess we save insurance for last, but honestly, we're the last line of defense for all of you trying to protect your businesses out there. So who we are at VTC, we've been around a while. We started in 1957 in the construction industry, actually. We were a surety, contract surety agency only. And over the years, we grew into a full service independent insurance agency with our largest product as being in commercial insurance and bonding. We offer not just insurance, but risk management services. And, 60% of our customer base is related to the construction industry. So, we really are pleased to be part of the ABC here and really to talk about what's this as being a very important topic now. About VTC, we can access about 90% of the insurance marketplace. When you're thinking about something like cyber insurance, it's you have to have that reach, because a lot of products are coming from the London markets in terms of maybe the best products that are out there, as well as the most affordable. And when you think about our ranking, we're in the state of Michigan, we are in the top 3 in terms of independent agents and brokers. Go ahead, Matt, next slide. And so insurance is only part of the equation. In my mind, we really take a holistic view of risk management. So really reducing the total cost of risk, and everything you've heard so far is about managing your risk. And it starts with your infrastructure from an IT perspective, as well as how you're protecting yourselves. In the insurance industry, the underwriters are looking for just that. So to make yourself insurable, what are you doing? Just like if you're on a job site, to make that job site safer, what are you doing in terms of educating your employees to make them safer on the job site? The same goes for cyber insurance. And so we offer a number of different services. And I would say we really focus in on how do we transfer risk, and what can we do to mitigate that. So let me talk to you a little bit about the insurance marketplace. And we have to remember that insurance for cyber has only been around since 1997. I think AIG sold the very first internet liability policy back in 1997. If you compare that to the rest of the industry, well, workers' comp got its start in the early 1900s. You go beyond that, back in the 1400s, that's when Lloyd's was first founded, and they were insuring ship vessels. So insurance goes back a long ways, but relatively speaking, cyber is the new frontier. And if you kind of look at the graph I have up there, it really tells you what's been going on in the cyber marketplace, okay, so from a premium standpoint. And so I would say leading up to 2020, it was the Wild West when it came to cyber coverage. Everybody wanted to get into this because it was a new product line. So carriers were lining up, putting policy forms together, actually trying to one-up each other in terms of the coverages that might be available, and as well charging very little, relatively speaking, for the coverage. And then what happened? Well, you'll see beginning in 2020, I should go back, please. In 2020, you can see it started to increase. And what happened in 2020? Well, that's when COVID hit. And guess what happened when COVID hit? Everybody said, take your computer, rip it off your desk, take it home and set it up, and do your work from home. With in a lot of cases, little regard for what that security was like. And so you had a lot of people working from home. This is where you started to see the prevalence of cyber take off in terms of the claims that we're hitting, especially as well as the bad actors were proliferating. So there was just more of them out there. And so it's become a get rich quick scheme. And so you've seen there was a massive correction over the last couple of years, the 2020, 2021, and in 2022. Really what we saw is underwriters tightened up. So coverage was harder to get, or they were restricting coverage dramatically or reducing limits. And then the requirements, the underwriters were getting smarter in terms of what to look for, in terms of what makes a better risk, in terms of the stuff that businesses were doing to protect themselves from cyber risk. And then in 2023, you can go to the next slide, Matt. 2023, I would say the market has kind of returned a little bit. It has softened considerably. We are still seeing some pricing increases, but I think underwriters have gotten their arms around what makes a good risk or not. And so that's a big piece of it. And so the question I think all of you on the line have to ask yourselves is, are we or do we attract underwriters, attract the best terms and conditions that are out there? Terms and conditions have improved. We're going to still see some sublimits for ransomware or and phishing, especially like the e-crime, but we are seeing that relax a little bit. But capacity has returned, and underwriters' appetite has expanded. I would say that there's a very robust appetite for contractors out there in the marketplace. But I think the one thing that you have to keep in mind, because this is still such a new product, And, to find the best product, sometimes we have to go to overseas to the London markets. You're going to find that you have to pay attention to what your policy says, probably more than any other policy that you may hold, whether it's general liability, workers' comp. All of those are pretty much the same, carrier to carrier. When you get to cyber liability, there are vast differences in terms of how broad the coverage is, what they're doing to restrict coverage, as well as what are the requirements that you have to take to make sure that the claim won't be denied if you have a claim. Go ahead, Matt. So one of the things that just some things that you want to keep in mind, and this is really where you want to engage your agent, is that because there's no standardization for this line of business, you got to read the fine print. And so some of the things that we see out there that you really have to pay attention to, and we list them here, but it's all about how well are you protecting yourself? And so one of the things is unsupported software exclusions, right? So if you've got software that's end of life and it's not being supported and you're using that, that's a big vulnerability. And so, that's going to be something that they're going to be looking for. And so you got to take a look to see whether that's going to be excluded or not. Social engineering callback provisions. So you may have a sublimit of 250,000. And what social engineering is somebody dupes you essentially into wiring funds to who you think might be your vendor, your to your bank, etc. And you press the button and it goes to a bad actor. What they have built into some forms, not all, is if you don't have an independent way of verifying each transfer before you do it, you could negate coverage. And so you have to take a look if that exists or not. Now, I'm going to say a lot of policies have that today, but you need to be aware of it because, that's going to tell you how do you educate your people, how do you beef up your system, your protocol, so that you can avoid that. You've got the other thing I put out there is at the very bottom, you'll see, one of the big reasons, one of the things you got to look for is what does your insurance carrier provide? And I think one of the major benefits, of course, not just for protection, but it's also for what are the resources out there pre and post. So you can do a lot of vulnerability checks. The insurance companies will offer those. In fact, that's part of their underwriting process. So they'll take a look. Number two is just the post incident. There's a lot of forensics that are involved, especially when you are in a situation with ransomware or somebody, or you've got a lost funds or somebody's hacked your system and has locked it up from an extortion perspective. And so, they provide those resources as part of the claim. And I'll give you an example. This goes back to 2017, but we had a contractor who Friday morning, early in May, it was 7:30 in the morning, I get a phone call that they had been locked down and they couldn't access any of their server. And essentially, from a construction perspective, on the surface, it didn't stop them from working that day. They had their crews out doing what they needed to be done. But because all of their data, all of their accounts receivable, everything was tied up in that server, essentially a hacker had gotten in, locked it down because it was not in the cloud. It was not the security protection around it from a password perspective was very, very limited. So essentially, they charged $35,000 Bitcoin, 30,000 Bitcoin, and to release it. And so he made the call to me. We got the insurance company on the line. They tried to break it because at the end of the day, the insurance company's got the resources. We're going to try to break the code and get in there. If they don't have to pay, they don't want to. That obviously then that helps you. But after exhausting those efforts, they came back and said, we're going to have to move forward and pay the ransom. Well, in the meantime, the ransom was increased to 50,000 Bitcoin. Now, what's interesting about that claim, I mean, $50,000 in Bitcoin. What's interesting about that claim is the forensic cost. So at the end of the day, the carrier paid it. It was $50,000, but the forensics that went around that was a whole nother deal. And that total claim went for about $110,000 just to get to free up their server so they could, get to their accounts receivable. And so I point that out as that's how it happens, and that's what the expense can be. So I think if you're somebody who doesn't believe that you should have cyber coverage, what's the odds of you getting hacked? I mean, we hear a lot of reasons why you don't want to buy the coverage. And I think one of the things you have to understand is without those resources, you have to go hunt them down yourself unless you have a very good contingency plan. But you have to go figure those out. Now, the insurance companies get a discount on those things. And so what I would say is make sure that your carrier, in addition to making sure how the policy reads, has those kind of resources. So just some things that the underwriters are looking for is under data collection concerns, because it's getting more sophisticated, especially where biometrics are concerned. And so, that's, I think, it'll be interesting to see where the insurance industry goes and how they might address that. But that is something that they're looking at. And sometimes you will see biometric exclusion on policies. Artificial intelligence, which has already been spoken about, is creating an even more it's becoming even more of a menace in terms of the ease that people are getting in fooling employees, right? And so this is where your controls, your education is going to come in, and I can see where there's going to be a lot more tightening around this area. Ransomware threats, especially in the manufacturing area, we're starting to see an uptick of that because they can shut down whole lines of robotics. That's a big concern if they can't deliver to Chrysler or GM their product in time, because they will get fined for that, right? And so I just put it out there that when you think about these development trends, it's going to be a moving target. But I will say that it's still actually very reasonable to buy this insurance. And so if you're a contractor, and let's say you're under 5 million in revenue, you can get policies for as little as $2,500. If you're in that 5 million to 10 million revenue range, you can get a policy for $7,500. And so I say that it can be cost effective. It also depends on kind of what you're doing. But at the end of the day, I view this as kind of an integral part of how you're going to manage your risk.
Oop, could I mute myself? Awesome. Thank you, Brian, for that. What I want to go ahead and do is, guys, we have some kind of pre-made questions to get the conversation going here. We're going to start with, we're going to go back to Jim. So Jim, as we progress here, what should a business start on? Where should a business start as far as the cybersecurity journey, if they have limited resources or just expertise?
Let me unmute myself as well.
Right.
I would say see if they can engage with a partner such as Grit or another MSP. Verify, check your backups, things of that nature. Go into that realm. Mm-hmm. And moving forward with that. My computer did something really strange just now. Okay, I'm back. But yeah, I would say, they're limited resources, limited expertise. They may not be able to do backups, things of that nature. Engage with somebody that knows, look around. The internet's got a vast majority of people, but yeah, see if you can engage with somebody like an MSP like Grit.
Yeah, I think of all else, it's going back to all roads lead to the backup, right? As far as like it's making sure that is not only something that you guys have that is backing up. I think the fact that they're making sure that it's also protected from ransomware, because backups can actually be encrypted as well. So that's a really strong point. We kind of talked about this. That's kind of the slide to go with that already as far as the strategy. Last question for you, Jim, and then we'll head over to our next panelist. But how can a business ensure that its cybersecurity measures are continually improving and adapting to the new emerging threats?
I think there's two parts here, Matt. Continually improving. We all talk about making sure that you're annually checking everything, check your backups, test your backups, annual training for all your users, that sort of thing. And if you're doing continual improvement, that improvement posture should adapt to the new threats without any issue at that point. So, but yeah, annual at that point with all of it.
All right, awesome. Saroj, for you, so for small organizations already partnered with like an MSP or they have their own internal IT, how does Arctic Wolf's approach enhance the overall security efforts?
Yeah, so as you know, right, we work with partner like Grit to deliver a solution, right? So this way, the customer are not alone, they have trusted partnership with Grit, and then we are delivering a solution through Grit. So we are always up to date, and we are providing 24/7 coverage, right? And also, when we partner with MSP partner like Grid, they go through a very rigorous selection process. We make sure that the match is there, they are 24/7, for example, they can deliver a solution, right? It goes both ways, right? And that's
Right.
how the customer can trust Grid that it can deliver article solution.
Awesome. So given that many security solutions, again, this is kind of on the topic of artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
what is Arctic Wolf's perspective on leveraging AI and, how does it impact your guys' overall approach?
Actually, we've been doing this since the inception of articles, right? As I mentioned earlier, we're ingesting 5 trillion of events a week, So we have to make sense of this data, right? This is where we're using AI to look at the pattern analysis, behavior analysis to see what bad guys are doing, what's happening in the environment, almost real time, right? This is where we're leveraging AI to make sense of this data. And the future solution for us is, we're thinking about like have a chat bot, like chat GPT type agent that MSP partner can use to get answer. For example, hey, can you give me the IP address this user communicated with in last week, right? If you issue that query, you should get the report, That's what we're working right now, for example.
Very cool. Just as a reminder, if you guys have questions, go ahead and start putting those into the chat session as well. We'll start looking at those after we're done with the next couple questions here. All right, Brian, over to you at BTC. So with the rising number of cyber insurance claims, what are maybe the key factors are underwriters prioritizing when assessing a business cybersecurity posture? Good question.
Yeah, good question. So there's really kind of 3 areas that they're looking at closely. So first, again, it's how secure have you made your own system? But more importantly, too, what kind of do you have multi-factor authentication? That is a big piece of the equation here. I know I hear a lot of complaints about from potential buyers of insurance that they don't like multi-factor authentication because it's that extra step or it's inconvenience. It really isn't. I think you've got a lot of different options out there to do that, to make it slick and for your employees. But at the end of the day, the underwriters are going to be looking to see if you have that in place. Like I mentioned before, there are some clauses in a policy where it says, this has to be in place in order to have coverage in force. I'll say the second piece is the employee training. 90% of all claims, insurance claims under cyber, happen because of employee error or employee being fooled. So this is where I like to say you got to create a healthy paranoia within your organization when it comes to what they're seeing. And so education, training, and somebody like a Grit, for example, can even work with you to do some not only knowledge-based training, but also some testing to see if they fall for it and stuff. And so I put that out there. And then the social engineering controls is really the protocols around to verify fund transfers. And they have to be independent sources in terms of verify those. If you think about if you think about claim denials, because this was asked before in a different session we did, Matt, but 44% of claims are denied due to the failure of a company to meet their security requirements, right? So these are companies who supposedly have security requirements, but they fail to meet those, okay? So that's a big piece of the equation. And so when you think about what does that really mean, there's going to be an application that you're going to have to fill out, and there'll be a lot of questions. And by the way, include your IT firm in answering those questions, because they get a little technical. And I typically will go direct to their IT person to get those questions answered, because they do get into endpoint, they do get into a lot of other things. How often are you doing patching and all of that? But when you think about where some of these denials, the biggest reasons for denial is, one, the social engineering schemes that are out there. So these are people within their own organization, disregard the security control, disable things so they can make a transfer or do something. If that happens, that's going to be denied. The other areas are misrepresentation. So I get back to those applications. That's what we refer to as a warranty app. So that's why you want to make sure your IT professionals, and because the underwriter is going to expect you're doing what you say you're doing, right? And so a lot of times what we find is customers either inadvertently or maybe they plan to do something, but it never happens, right? So they warrant that they're doing it, doesn't happen. That'll create a denial. And then same thing, overstated security measures. If you don't, all I can say is be as honest as you can be in the application. Your agent can help you navigate that for coverage, but you may have to implement some things. And then I would say the other thing is, if you don't disclose you had prior incidents. I mean, those are the things that show up that why you might get denied. So I put that out there because I think that's important, because what these underwriters are looking for is that you are minding the store. Okay, so.
Awesome. So with the evolving threat landscape, why should a business consider investing in cyber insurance, and what additional resources do these policies typically provide by beyond the financial coverage? And I know you talked about a little bit about that, but if you can go into a little more of that.
Yeah, right. Just real brief, and I have. So I think one, it's still relatively low cost. And if you're wiring money or you're doing a lot of that, you have it in the logistics area where people are fooling logistics company and delivering product to the wrong spot. And what happens is it never shows up to where it's intended. They find out it went to the wrong spot and it's been stolen, right? So I think for the cost, the one thing you can't be 100% on is the human aspect of this, right? And so when you think about the 90% coming from employee error, humans are still involved. They will be involved. And so for the cost, it makes a lot of sense. Number two, it's really the resources that are provided by the carrier. For you're getting forensics, you're getting all of that, assessments, help, just with a phone call. And that might be the bigger piece when it comes to having a cyber claim.
Awesome. Great to put your slide up there, Brian. Is there anything else to that you want to add?
Nope.
We're good. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start opening things up to our audience here. So, Vicky, I think you have everybody muted. We can start opening up that. Let me just check the chat real quick. I think we did get a couple questions in that. Let's see here. Oh, this is for Article. This is from Brian Kraser. So, great question. So it says, how do we protect ourselves from you? So similar to the Kaseya breach a few years ago, for those of you that don't know, that was Kaseya is a large company that supplies a lot of software for companies like managed service providers. They had a big breach. We call that a upstream attack. Affected a lot of companies. We put a lot of faith in our security providers. What happens if you get hacked? How do you protect yourself from an internal employee of yours, from, say, stealing and selling data of yours that you have access to? You said feeding data, and you have humans involved. Brian talked a little bit about the human factor there as well. So this leaves open vulnerability from the system meant to protect us. So really much a loaded question there. I think maybe all of us can kind of feed into this a little bit, but Saroj, I'll start with you since it was directed towards you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian, for that question. Great question. A few things is, we are ISO 27001 certified, right? This is what the, Internet Standard for Managing Information Security. We are also SOC Type 2 compliant, so we get audited every year, right? from independent auditors. As for how we are protecting the data, what I meant by collecting data is actually we are not storing the files that you may have on a computer, let's say some accounting documents or some confidential information, all that, right? All we are doing with our agent is getting the security telemetry from the endpoint. So could be, let's say, from Microsoft Event Manager, right? Let's say a login failure, for its particular user. So we are only getting the security related telemetry to our platform. Same thing with APIs, right? We get the logs from, let's say, Microsoft 365. Those are only security related events. We get the file hash, right? So we don't get the file itself, just the attributes of the file. So we are really storing only the minimum data requires to analyze the threat, right? That's one thing. The other thing is, we only store data up to 90 days by default on our platform, and then you can choose to store for multiple years if needed, and those are secure according to industry standard, right? And we get audited as employer. I cannot go and look at customers' data, right? I get audited, I get monitored all the time, right? Being said that, we are on the same page, right? You go to the bank, you go to your doctor, right? They have the information too. They follow HIPAA, right? Bank that own the industry standard. So we are regulated, right? And also we follow the standard to protect the data. But as I said, we are not keeping your confidential information. All the information we are storing and analyzing is the security related events, login failures, traffic going to bad countries, and all that. So it's not like the content, not like username, password, social security information, healthcare records, none of that. None of those information come to our platform. Hope that helps.
Awesome question. All right, we'll take a few more from our audience.
Anybody have anything else? Let me know. I can unmute you and you can jump in and ask your question. Quiet crowd here.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions
Hey,
here.
Vicky.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go
I guess
ahead.
I'm unmuted now. Okay, there we go. That was easy.
No.
Hey, so I guess this is Mike Mead with Wieland. I guess one of the questions that I would ask is just in relation to education for employees. Because like we've talked about in this presentation, and thank you guys for this excellent presentation. Like we've found that so much of this is falling on end users recognizing these emails and links and not entering their credentials when they're presented with a question or something when they click on a link in an email. Like we're working on education, we're talking with everyone all the time, but it seems like people are getting tricked easier and easier as we go forward. And multi-factor authentication doesn't seem to always protect us from accounts getting compromised. So I guess my question would be, what do you guys see as something coming down the line next? That not that we're going to have triple factor authentication, but what would be something that would help make multi-factor authentication even better? Maybe that's the best way to present the question.
I think that's a fantastic question. Who would like to take that?
I can speak to what we're doing for article side, right?
Yeah.
One thing we have done recently is, we are integrating our platform with various vendors, Mimecast, email identity, emails, the provider that provides email protection, right? Microsoft, we're getting data from them as well, right? Other things we have done is actually through API calls, if we see some suspicious behavior happening in a customer environment, such as this Intra ID, that is Microsoft solution, we can actually disable those user accounts. We can also cancel a session, meaning that let's say somebody's stealing the data from SharePoint, right? Microsoft Online SharePoint or Office 365, and if we detect something, we can make an API call to cancel that session, which will stop the data transfer. Those are some things we have implemented into our platform recently.
Awesome. I think to add to that, and Jim, you can back me on this as well, but one of the things we have really been working with, as a lot of other IT providers have been doing, is outside of a yearly or quarterly type of training, is also working and doing proactive simulations of phishing attempts to their employees. So if you're not doing that currently, something I would definitely look into do it. There's a lot of resources out there. I mean, there's no secret sauce. We use the vendor KnowBe4. Arctic Wolf also has some solutions like that too as well in that market. So it depends on really ultimately what you're looking for, but actually testing your user base on a monthly basis, where you can get a 10,000 foot view of the company and say, hey, look and see, here's the people that are clicking on stuff. Here's people that are doing pretty well, have that baseline data, and then see if there's any type of trends within your users to see, maybe we need to have a specific conversation for just these particular individuals, or maybe loss of privileges, that type of thing. So that's a big piece. So training is definitely top of mind. I would say in partnership with a company like an MSP or a security provider like Arctic Wolf, where if training's good, right? Multi-factor is good. It's another layer of defense, and you definitely need to be doing all of it, but also having that endpoint detection along with a piece of like a SIMSOC or managed detection and response tool. And that's kind of the conversation a lot of the cybersecurity seminars that I've been a part of this month is really kind of going to, is like, if all else fails, you have this other piece of detection, right? To where you can it looks at things like Office 365 accounts. It looks for any type of malicious, malware being injected somewhere. It looks at all of those things. So it's a combination of training, software. On Grit side, like, we're definitely gonna be looking at the backups, ensuring that, if all else fails, we have something to restore from, whether it's a cloud type of environment or it's on premise with a server. That's ultimately where, we need to look at that. And then again, everything all kind of goes back to insurance, right? Making sure you have a cyber liability policy in place. There's lots of tools and resources. There's a forensics, cyber forensics piece that's also part of that. There's a legal piece that's part of that too. If all, things fail. The main point is that it's going to happen these days. And I'm not saying that as a scare tactic or anything. It's just, it is. There's something that's going to happen, whether it's as small as just, we got a phishing email, we recognized it, and, we disregarded it, or somebody's legitimately trying to do a breach of some type. So it's ultimately, it's how fast you can recover from those incidences today versus a question of, is it going to happen today? So.
I guess I would just add, you want to create a kind of an environment where it's healthy to question, right? If you don't have that already, right? So I get a lot of contract requests from insurance companies all the time, and I get these unannounced DocuSign. We've gotten to the point where I will not open anything if I'm not expecting it, number one. And so what I do is I'll verify. I'll forward that on to whoever carrier sent it to me, the person, independently, and say, is this legit or not, right? I think you have to get your employees to just question everything they may be seeing. Now, they can still be fooled by things they are expecting, right? But I think you really have to, part of the education that you can take them through from an awareness perspective is going to teach them to see certain things. There are still certain words that show up. I think the last one we did, Matt, it was about using the word, if you see the word kindly in there. I mean, it's still, there's some things about the language that don't jive. But beyond that, it's just simple getting your folks to verify, especially if there's something coming from the CFO going to somebody else to pay a vendor. That person should pick up the phone and just ask the CFO. One of the other things that we've done, and we've encouraged folks too, is from a top down, like our CEO, probably at least on a monthly basis or on every 2 weeks, he'll send out an email just to the agency, to the employees, just citing something that either he's observed, and don't get me wrong, we see it in our own email, right? And so it's really, if from top down, just making that as kind of the front of your mind and just making sure you're communicating that with your employees. You know, you kind of got to take it all from all angles here. So, but there's no silver bullet to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I would say to confirm everything that you guys are saying, pretty much every recommendation you guys have made today, we have in place in some form or fashion. And we're still finding that it falls on that employee to, and if they do click on the link and put in their credentials, they've got to let somebody know. Because, you know, when you've got that protection in place that can go in and actually find vulnerabilities, that's great. But if the employee would have told you an hour and a half ago when they clicked on the link, it would have probably saved them a lot of hassle. So it's, yeah. So thank you for that today, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great question. I think we can take just a couple more and respect everybody's time here. Anybody else? Pretty quiet group. Okay. Vicky, I think that's a wrap then.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, panelists. Appreciate all the great information. Thanks, Matt, for organizing this. And thank all of you for joining us here today. I do want to remind you that I will be sending out a recording of the webinar with the slide deck in the next couple of days, probably tomorrow. We also have a webinar coming up on November 21st on AI governance. So we're going to have an attorney talking about how to put together that information in your organization. So watch for that. That'll be coming up in the midweek briefing. It'll be on our website, and we'll be sending out some more announcements about it. So thank you once again. We really appreciate all your time today.
Thank you all.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
Thanks
day.
to the AGC.
Yeah, thank you, AGC.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, great. Thank you, AGC.